Hey there, YouTubers. I want to show you another motorbike that I made. This one is on an old Schwinn frame. Uh, at one time, this bike had a 2-speed cable-operated bendix back wheel. I didn't even know they made a 2-speed with a coaster brake, but they did. And this is the wheel. I had to detune it to its lowest gear. The axle busted, so I found a spring in the back of an old flashlight that worked out real good for holding the gears up into the planetary gear part, and it's just in its lowest gear only. But in 1990, no, hell, about 88 or so, I bought this bike for $15 with a sliding motor on it. That's why the back fender's cut off. I wouldn't have cut it off if I'd known I was going to end up putting this Briggs & Stratton with the chain drive. I would have just cut a notch for the chain. But it's on its second life, you might say. I used a bicycle sprocket, welded it to a disc, and bolted it to that big fat lip that the bendix wheel has. You see there on where the planetary gears are, how fat it is. Well, that left me a good lip on this side to put some 5/16 bolts, hold that sprocket to it. Then down on the bottom half, I made me a chain tensioner out of an old one cog off of a derailleur, and still have its original tensioner. Plus, I put a cheater spring to make sure it doesn't do any real flopping. The sprocket isn't 100% centered up. I'm just a tiny bit off, and I didn't want to take no chances. The pulley for the jack shaft, let me get a light here. Get a handheld light and we'll get a better. This pulley was part of a squirrel cage fan we had over at Albert Oil Company that got ran over by a forklift. So I cut the spokes out with a die grinder, the 5 spokes, welded them to a flat disc, and put the flat disc on. I'll get over here where you can see it. On an air conditioner idler off of some sort of car. I have no idea what. Might even been off a truck because it's probably something came out of the scrap at work. But I welded a sprocket to the bearing surface and the pulley to the sprocket. In putting this motor, this little 2-horse Briggs on it, did it like I do all the others. Put my little bracket on the front where there we go. Put my little bracket on the front down tube, I guess you'd call it. The back one, same deal. It's welded. Let me get some light on it there. It's welded to the seat post. What was I getting at? I had to do some major notching up here on the seat post because there was no room to accommodate the gas tank, and I didn't want to do like I do on all the others and hunt up a manifold and put a remote tank and all that. I wanted to use the little 2-horse just like it came off the edger. So this bar that the light is pointing to right there, that is a thing off of a trailer hitch where you hook your safety chains in the holes. It's good heavy metal, and the piece I welded to it is even heavier than the trailer hitch part, the part that the jack shaft is, or the idler is bolted to. It's really heavy. But you ain't got to worry about that giving out or bending or anything, and it almost looks like it was intended for it, but I intended for it. That's where that comes in. That's just some more of that old antique wiring that I thought looked cool. It's off an old lighter, an old heater. And the same kind of kill switch up here. If y'all have ever seen one of those aluminum picture frames that you buy at like Hobby Lobby, they have a snap-in deal in the back that holds the glass up, smashed up against the front of the frame. That's what I use for my kill switches. I put tape on the handlebar, solder my wire to that little springy thing. It's spring tension. It holds the glass up against the front and keeps it all sandwiched together. But I use them as my ground out for the points. And you probably saw this on the video I did just the other day on the Kawasaki bike. This one over here. Same type deal. Little ground out deal on the handlebar. And I also use the 10-speed or multi-speed trail bike shifters for my throttles. Again, I heat up a 1-inch grip with a propane torch, and once the rubber's good and soft, smush it up on where you would have clicked off the gears, and the 1 inch will coast on the 7/8 handlebar. But I know I told that in another video. The exhaust, where are we at? There we go. The exhaust is muffler first. Then I made a piece of bicycle handlebar exhaust with a little fishtail on the end because I was bored, didn't have anything else to do. Top mount, I keep my motors all mounted in 3 spots. That's plenty enough. 2 on the bottom, 1 on the top. It ain't going nowhere. Up front, this little bracket was intended for a luggage carrier. I didn't have the luggage carrier, so I took some all thread and made some fake strengthening struts like a lot of the old bikes have, like this antique Monarch bike has, or not Monarch, Mercury bike. Got the flying Mercury head up on the front of it. And it's not got anything to do with Mercury car. It's got to do with Murray out of Ohio. It's a good looking bike, and someday I'll motorize it, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I don't want to hack it up. That's another project for another day. What else on this old bike was kind of worth talking about? Really not much. They're all so similar that unless you have them side by side, you think people say, oh, I see you rode your bike up here again today. Well, that's not always true. I rode a bike, but it's not the same. They think I've got one, I've got 21. But something to do. Keeps me out of the strip clubs. No, that's a joke. I ain't going to no strip clubs. And the spare spark plug, that's in a Toyota bracket that held the wires that went to the coil on a little 2TC Hemi Toyota. I just thought they'd be cute. This motor doesn't foul plugs. It ain't got no hours on it. You just don't use the edger endlessly. But brand new clutch. Another doctored handbrake lever like I showed on the Kawasaki video. You cut them open right there. Stretch them out so that the shoes will wrap around the clutch. Basically does what those band brakes do on go-karts and mini bikes, but it doesn't cost anything. One little spot of weld and you're good to go. Back in the saddle again. I'd say that's it. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching Wade Made Motorized Bikes or Wade Made Motorized Mayhem on YouTube. Shows all this junk. It's just regular old bicycle chain. A really overkilled sprocket. I didn't do it. A buddy of mine welded that sprocket to a disc and made it heavier than it needs to be, but that's better than the other extreme. I like my little chain tensioner though. It worked out pretty good. And it's, even though it's held on with 2 hose clamps, you can't move that thing. I've tried, and I've rode it quite a few miles since I put the tensioner on. It's sturdy. Because it's on a piece of metal, it wraps around the pipe like and conforms to it. It's not going to slip. If I thought it was going to slip, I'd put one little sting of weld on it, but it doesn't need that. But that was the first bendix wheel I had seen, and you can see the bendix word on it. If I get my light just right. Get it way back here. Anyway, take my word for it. It's a bendix. It was a cable-operated coaster brake 2-speed. First one I've seen, and I've messed with bikes all the time, but it had to get turned into just a 1-speed low gear so I can, if I have trouble, I can pedal myself home. Thanks for watching. If I make another one, you'll see it. Bye-bye.